People make architecture, and architecture makes buildings. Buildings grow into cities, and cities grow people. First, there is nature, a river, a plain, a rich land, a place to settle, a place to make a home. Next, there is the human ability to make from nature. Posts and beams, walls and windows, floors and roofs, to make buildings. And with this, the ability to embellish with art, columns, arches, gables, gazebos. The ability to speak the culture of the built environment. Then, buildings to buildings relate and make walks, promenades, streets, and squares. Interior spaces and exterior spaces, populated with human activities, provide structure and form urbanity. They make cities, and cities are in the nature of being human. Architecture is a product of the human imagination, imagining how to create a humane environment. The quality of the environment is not something to be counted, nor weighed, nor measured. It is something to be felt, experienced, lived in. Downtown is the heart of the city, the center of social and commercial life, a place to shop, do business, meet friends, and watch the world go by. The settlement of Iowa sparkled the plains and waterways with downtowns, centers of community image and identity. The richness of the land and the ingenuity of its inhabitants brought growth, a growth that pressed the land and its people, a pace too quick to structure and form in the human image. But that, made in haste, can be remade with pleasure. Downtown is in transition. The downtowns of Iowa are characterized by continuity and change. The preservation of tradition and the production of opportunity. This transition can be guided by a number of positive objectives. There is a need to control urban growth, the dissolution of urbanity into suburban sprawl, a disorder that threatens some of the richest, most productive agricultural land of the nation. There is the need to conserve energy resources through the concentration of services and amenities to improve accessibility, to shorten the commute. There is the need to maintain the cultural tradition of downtown, the central community image and identity, the place to go. The downtowns of Iowa have a rich mixture of architectural, natural, and urban resources, which, if respected, provide a solid foundation for a humane transition. The downtowns of Iowa have rich architectural resources, buildings and neighborhoods of regional and national significance. Mason City is home to the marvelous examples of prairie school architecture, including the work of Frank Lloyd Wright. older buildings in Iowa's downtowns provide examples of love and richness rarely found in structures being built today. Many admired buildings transmit the cultural heritage of the settlers who transported and adapted tradition to local conditions with character and charm. Elegant 19th century Victorian homes coherently structure the neighborhoods of Sherman Hill in Des Moines and Madison Street in Dubuque. Unfortunately, some architectural resources have been defaced by thoughtless modernization that do not respect the existing rich architectural character of the building. Columns from a pedimented Greek revival structure dissolve behind a canopy and blue glazed ceramic tiles. Upper floors and skylines remain as traces of the character and continuity that buildings and towns once had. In contrast, the first floors are often the attached building equivalent of random strip development. Why don't we think of whole buildings, complete streets, continuity, integrity, design? Architectural elements of Iowa's heritage, including some of national significance, escaped defacement through modernization. They were simply and wastefully destroyed. contrast, other important landmarks like the Valley National Bank have been patiently and skillfully restored. Neighborhood revitalization is another important indicator of community concern. Craftspeople needed to produce or reproduce elegant buildings and details are still available throughout Iowa. The talent has not been lost, only underused. Iowa is prairie bounded by two great rivers, the Mississippi on the east, the Missouri on the west. In between is a fine tracery of streams, creeks, and rivers, a system of waterways that is a major national resource and a distinct urban amenity. About 75% of Iowa's cities are located on rivers. The University of Iowa in Iowa City is bisected by the Iowa River. The campus is organized to take advantage of this resource with buildings on the hills overlooking choice views. Iowa City's parks on the river edge are a distinct communal resource. It is the setting for an annual river festival that is a major urban event. In other places, there is an extraordinary neglect of the river as an urban amenity. While some towns have developed the riverfront as park or recreational space, others have turned their backs on the river. It is not used for recreation, views, transportation, or even dumping. It is simply ignored. Bridge bridges are in a state of disrepair. Factories and commercial buildings turn blank walls to the river. The river is edged by parking lots. Even a working river need not be completely separated from downtown. In Dubuque, elegant houses situated on the bluffs get views of the river. But over time, the actual river edge has been excluded from the community by industrial development. Elkader also has a beautiful riverfront residential area, but a neglected downtown riverfront. Occasionally, the river that has been ignored by the Central Business District has been utilized fully in the adjacent residential area. A picturesque setting structured by views and orientation. Mason City, portrayed as the River City in Meredith Willson's The Music Man, is a town whose residential area along Willow Creek is envied by outsiders. Yet downtown, the river is covered up, ignored, or used as a dumping ground. Architecture students at Iowa State University have studied riverfront development possibilities in the downtown areas of both Elkader and Mason City. The resulting proposals emphasized visual and pedestrian access to the river. If natural resources are assets where people live, why can they not also be assets where people work and shop? It is possible for towns to get their image of uniqueness from elements located along the river. Paris, France, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, are the only two cities in the world that have their municipal offices on an island in a river that runs through downtown. The ever-present rivers provide a considerable opportunity for making Iowa's downtowns special. At the urban scale, a primary architectural resource is coherent structure. Most cities in Iowa are laid out in a grid pattern that falls within or incorporates the 1-mile Jeffersonian grid that subdivides farmland across the Midwest. Within this grid, alternative types of structure produce variety. There are downtowns coherently organized around an open central park, which are closed on all four sides by the business district. Other towns have erected a major civic building in this central location, and again, the central business district surrounds it. In contrast to centrality is linear organization, downtown structured by Main Street. The density of development usually decreases as one moves to either side of the linear concentration of business. When this Main Street is perpendicular to the river sometimes represents a barrier between commercial and residential development. When the Main Street is parallel to the river, and particularly when it is immediately adjacent, the central business district frequently turns its back on this resource. The final form of organization that structures Iowa's downtowns is found in the larger cities. The central business district is composed of blocks between and along two parallel major streets. Each of these organizational forms has provided downtown with a coherent structure and identity. In some places, this precious order is being lost. In centrally organized downtowns, the meaning of the town square as center has been diminished as major new structures have been dispersed seemingly at random throughout the grid. The coherence of the square has been eroded as the intensely developed edges have been destroyed by insensitive buildings and parking lots. In other downtowns, the continuous shopping promenade has become discontinuous, punctuated by voids, freestanding pavilions, and vacant lots. And in the larger cities, the clustered blocks of downtown have been eaten away to the extent that parking lots seem to outnumber building lots. Walking down the street has become an encounter with large blank walls and barren entrances to uninviting buildings. Some towns, however, have been redeveloping their downtowns with a mixture of restoration and new construction. Dubuque and Iowa City are two examples. Regional shopping malls have to some extent siphoned away business from downtown. But downtown can offer much of what a mall offers, as well as being easily accessible to residents. Most importantly, both create public spaces in which people can be with other people. Architecture is not only the design of buildings in space, it is also the design of spaces between buildings. It is in these spaces that the life of a city can be seen. Downtowns are in transition. Development and change range from minor street beautification projects to storefront restorations and remodeling, to the construction of new pedestrian malls and riverfront parks. This type of positive development and change is happening all across the state. It is an indication of the importance that downtowns have for their residents. An indication that the residents of Iowa towns care about and have pride in their communities. On the other hand, there is at times evidence of neglect and a lack of awareness of the architectural heritage, the natural amenities, and the urban structure as resources. The contrasting images of care and carelessness have pointed out that each city in Iowa has a unique combination of natural, architectural, and urban resources. In an important sense, these resources define the image and identity of the community. To be sure, things are less important than people. But if people recognize the intrinsic physical, cultural, and historical base from which future development can spring, and if people are sensitive to what they have, to how it is changing, and to how they can direct the transition, then each downtown in Iowa can grow and prosper in a manner that contributes to the well-being of its residents.